This is our second video in our primer for beginners to science fiction and fantasy series, this little mini series that we're doing. In the last video, we talked about fantasy. In this video, we're going to move into the future. We're going to talk about space. We're probably going to talk about future space and space future as we delve into sci-fi. Best sci-fi books for beginners. We're going to start with my favorite to get it out of the way. It's called Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. This book is just quintessential classic in some ways science fiction, as it tells of a young boy going into space for military training. These young kids are these elite minds of the future, and they're wanting to utilize these kids to be the next commanders in our fleet against this war against this alien species. So that's kind of the thesis of the story, if you will. It's got really cool set pieces and scenes. One of the iconic ones is the battle room where in zero null gravity, one team faces off another, really a whole sport kind of training that was created there. And then it's got a really cool cast of characters, young kids that are just brilliant-minded, but set at odds with one another very intentionally to try to bring in the best out of them. And you go through Ender Wiggins' perspective, this young kid who's just one of my favorite protagonists in history. The series continues, but this is definitely a standalone novel and is an easy entry into the sci-fi genre. Next up, we've got the debut novel by Pierce Brown called Red Rising. Now, this is an excellent blend of fantasy and sci-fi, especially the first one. The series, as it continues, gets more and more sci-fi, but this first one starts kind of sci-fi light. We are predominantly, or really holistically, on Mars during this book, and it's set up at first like The Hunger Games, and it's a lot like, at the same time, Divergent and some of those other young adult series, but it would be a discredit to Red Rising to compare it directly to those series, because in many ways it's better than all of those. Really, from the beginning to the end, we've got a quick-paced, fast-moving action, these super-powered, inhuman humans that are in this kind of like battle school together, but it's a life-or-death type of experience, and it's all kind of with a few of these futuristic type items or equipment or weapons even that they're utilizing out on Mars. I think you'll love the main character straight from the beginning, Darrow. He's someone that you can latch onto because he's kind of an underdog. He's someone that doesn't belong, shouldn't be there, and yet he's becoming friends with some of these people that should be his enemies, and it's just a really intricate tell there that weaves together. And Pierce Brown did incredible with this first novel. It was one of the first novels that I listened to all the way, and as soon as I finished it, I had purchased the physical copy, read through immediately again, and within a year had read it through 3 times. I've never done that before. Very easy to read. At the beginning, I will say that even with some of this other science fiction literature, that some of the jargon, some of the technical words, and some of the language that they use is made up, and so you're going to find it unfamiliar. But if it's not insurmountable, and if you'll push through, and if you'll press over that and get through that, then there's a wealth of a story there. Next up, we've got Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And this one is kind of our first dystopian novel that we're going to be talking about. Science fiction, dystopian, it's apocalyptic, it's got like this apocalyptic plague, it's got cults, and it's got this traveling band of theater kids, this theater troupe that is traveling around to these really vacant cities, if you can even call them that, in a post-apocalyptic future. It's one of the few standalone novels, really, that I'm going to be talking about. It's not even attached to a series whatsoever. It is a complete story. The first line the story starts at the end. The first line is the same day, same time, same whatever as the last line. And then all of what happens in between it's an incredible story that I think is kind of slept on. I don't hear about this novel as much as the others, but it is for those of you that like just straight fiction or maybe even mystery or things like that, then this book might fall directly into your lap here, because it's not so scientifically fabricated and advanced as some of these other novels that you're having to slog through. What does this mean? And what is this word? And what is this system? No. Most of the things that are talked about here is going to be familiar to you. It's just set in a science fiction post-apocalyptic future. And then we've got a young adult entry here called Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. And if you haven't heard of this, it's a lot of fun. Man, it's young adult, and it's set in a future reality where here in this world, it's so degraded that everybody has to escape reality by entering into this virtual reality known as the Oasis. And it's kind of like an MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role-playing game. It's like a video game, but everybody's kind of living out the worlds and the experiences that they want to in that false reality. So it's bittersweet, bitter in the real world, sweet in the Oasis, and there's a competition to win all the money. And we follow a protagonist as he's being able to go through this world in a virtual state while trying to fix even what's going on in the real world. All of that's kind of combined. One of the cool things is that because it's virtual reality, a lot of the characters or worlds you come across are familiar to you if you're a big 80s fan, because like 80s video games, 80s movies, 80s literature, you see some of those characters, some of those worlds realized here in this world, because again, it's in that Oasis. It's a lot of fun. It's an imperfect book. Some of the pacing is off. Some of the main characters kind of like things just kind of get handed to him and he always gets out of it, kind of like a Gary Stu type of character, but still it's a lot of fun as a read, and something that would be very easy for a lot of people to get into. And then we've got Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, and this book is so good and so much fun and so pure and so unique. What I mean by that is this. The premise is fairly simple. A massive robotic arm or piece of body is found in the world. I don't know if it was America or somewhere else. And then the implications of that, it couldn't have possibly been created by humans. So what does that mean? And it's the exploration of that unfolding narrative with First Contact and everything beyond that. However, it's told in a unique way. It's told all entirely through interviews. An unknown interviewer interviewing the cast that we become familiar with, and that is kind of our primary characters. And it's so unique, again, so pure, and I think it's the perfect blend of science fiction, not going too sci-fi heavy that it's a turn off, blending with fiction. So again, if you're a reader and you enjoy a lot of fiction, this is going to be a baby step into sci-fi. Yeah, there's massive robots. Yeah, there's aliens. Yeah, there's some technology that we probably don't have, but it's not too advanced in any of those areas, and has a compelling, interesting story that is the beginning of the Themis Files series that continues in its strength all the way through to the wonderful conclusion. Now we're going to move into a few traditionally classic sci-fi novels that I think are still incredible for today and hold up, but then are also very accessible for modern readers. One of them is 1984 by George Orwell. This is classic in all of the right ways. It was written in like 1949, something along those lines, about a futuristic 1989, and so many, like the way that George Orwell was able to imagine and predict a lot of the themes and creations and scientific advancements is just absolutely astounding. And I may have said the wrong year there. 1949 was when it was originally written, about 1984 numbers. George Orwell imagined like the advancements of television and even maybe internet before television and internet to the degree that it is now or has become. He imagined like how language could be corrupted and used in weird and improper ways to empower certain people and depress other people. He even imagined a corrupted political system and how that could take advantage of certain systems. All of these things we've seen come into fruition and come into reality. Thankfully, we don't have a thought police, which is something that's created here, and some of those other surveillance type things. At least I don't think we have it to that degree. It's one of those stories that builds, and then the last, 50, maybe even 100 pages is just an explosion of, oh my goodness, what's happening? Will we get out of this? Is there any hope? It's most certainly a read for classic fans and for just modern readers alike. Another classic novel is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. It's an alien invasion, and it's probably one of the best tellings of an alien invasion. In fact, when I say alien invasion, probably some of the depictions and ideas that maybe come in your head from certain media that you've consumed probably derived or started here with The War of the Worlds. There's a famous story passed around, and I don't know the validity of it, but that this was actually read as a radio broadcast. I know that was true, but that it caused such an alarm to the people that were just tuning in or listening to it for the very first time that some people had heart attacks, or some people were calling the emergency services, or some people were fleeing, or whatever, it caused a panic in certain cities and areas of the world because of this depiction of a real-life alien invasion. Now, again, I don't know how true that is, but still, the story is so good. It's very quick, less than 200 pages long, so you can read this in a short amount of time, and it's very clear and to the point, telling of that story in a very realistic way. Even the pacing is perfect, but there's a lull there in the middle, as there would be in an alien invasion if it wasn't just, done and over within the first few minutes. And so you feel all of that throughout the whole story. It really brought within me like this sense of dread and this sense of hopelessness, as if the aliens were really here. Maybe I heard the radio broadcast. And then another classic, but it is entirely different than the rest. It's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is a science fiction comedy. I mean, it's a humor novel in the best ways. British humor is hilarious, and you get that to the finest degree here. It's got aliens, and it's got spaceships, and it's got like completely invented creations, but it's also like the greatest weapon or tool of all time is a towel. The entire story is completely nonsensical in all of the best ways. It's so much fun, and it's so silly. If you want a lighthearted, humoristic science fiction novel, then this would most certainly be your pick. And then I wanted to conclude with Frank Herbert's classic called Dune. It's science fiction. It's also fantasy. There's a movie that's coming out very soon. I kind of talked about the trailer recently here on this channel. And it's set on a desert planet. So it's an entirely different planet, but it is completely a politically driven novel. While there is action, and while there are battle scenes, and while there are some fantastical creatures that live on the planet that they have to deal with, it is really a political, plot-driven, drama-driven novel that has, of course, scientific advancements if we're going to a completely new location in space, but it is, again, plot-driven. Now, it is a heavy novel, probably the heaviest science fiction novel that really just the heaviest novel that I talked about in this video, but it's well worth it. It's one where I would say if you can get past the world building that is laid out within the first 100 pages, and I know that is a huge ask for a lot of people, but if you can be persistent through that, like if you're a voracious reader enough of just other literature and you can push through where you learn all of these words and all of these, concepts, there is so much here. Those are my best suggestions if you want to get into science fiction and you're not yet there. Read some of these books. If I missed some key ones that you think are great entries into the sci-fi genre, please drop them in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching and liking this video. If you haven't yet, click subscribe and join the Dragon Army, and we'll see you in the next video.